I apologize. Again, good evening and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. Another week for a great hour-long talk. Today, I will be your host. I'm Paige Reynolds. We're missing Miss Carla Coleman, but she'll be with us next week. Um, for today's Wednesday talk, the title, it tells you it all. Being a Black man during these troubling times. Between social media and the news, something is always happening. So today we have 3 generations of Black men with us to give us insight on what being a Black man during these troubling times is for them. So I'm going to kick it off, and they're each going to tell us a little bit about themselves and what they do. So, Ed, if you want to start.
Sure. Thank you, Paige. Hi, everyone. My name is Edward Hill. I am a deacon at New Salem Missionary Baptist Church in Columbus, Ohio. I work in the technology space. I work for an organization called the Management Council, and I do all kinds of things there. I'm also a musician. I have a jazz group that I perform with called Copacetic. A lot of people know me from that. So I do a lot. I'm doing a lot. But I'm really honored to be here today and to be a part of this. I was joking around with the other gentleman on the call today. I thought I was going to be the middle person in this, the 3 generations, but apparently I'm the older generation. So we'll see if I can drop some wisdom, as Elon says. So thank you again for letting me be here today.
Of course, of course. Elon, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me and part of this conversation. My name is Elon Sims. Been a member at New Salem since about 2008, and I'm currently a social worker, but I work for a locally privately owned, family-owned company here in Columbus called Crane Group, where I serve as our vice president of community impact. And so it's my role to oversee our corporate giving and philanthropy program, as well as our community relation and community outreach efforts and our volunteerism for our staff. Additionally, as part of my role, I work to support our investment company as it relates to our social impact investments. And I'm also working alongside our leadership here at our company as it relates to our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And so really excited to take part in this conversation with both Deacon Hill and Julien, and look forward to just a great conversation this afternoon.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Okay. Julien?
Unfortunately, Julien is dropped off for a second there. I think he's coming back.
All
Hold
right.
on, hold on one second there. Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Paige? He's coming back.
Yeah, okay. We'll get him when he comes back. So, just to start our conversation off, with these troubling times, it's the pandemic, it's work in the pandemic, it basically is what life is like right now for that. So, with you guys, how is life, or has it started during the pandemic for you?
I tell you what, I'll let Elon go and then I'll follow him.
Well, it's interesting because I think I had told Mrs. Troy when I first got her email, and to see the topic, around what it's like to be a black man in America right now, I was like, whew, it's rough, and I was frank and honest with her, and I said, to be honest with you, the ask was timely for me, because to be completely frank, I've been in this space, right, and it's been hard right now, particularly being, a 34-year-old man raising two young black boys, and just seeing all the things that we're seeing, in our country, in our society. Sometimes it can feel a bit hopeless, but I know that there's great things that are happening and will happen. So I try to do my part and my best to live by, values of like respect, and dignity and worth of people, and hopefully do my part to get back in those ways. And so, but for me, it's been challenging. It's been hard, and I guess that's kind of how I've been feeling in this moment.
For sure.
Uh, yeah, I would echo that. I think that for me, it is challenging on multiple levels. I have, two adult children, and I'm also raising a younger child now. And so my struggle and challenge is really from the perspective of, what's going on for them. I certainly care about their well-being and the things that they are dealing with out in the world. And to be frank and honest, as Elon just said, I was really prayerful and hopeful that I wouldn't be seeing the things I'm seeing on television when I got this age. Having been through all the things that we as a people have been through in this country and throughout history, you would hope and think that your children wouldn't have to deal with some of these things, and it's very hurtful to see that happen at this time. So I would say, from a position of hope, that's where I hold on to. But there's also discouragement and disappointment in where we are as a country right now.
Definitely. It's hard to every day you turn on the news and then you see something else. It's like it's never ending. But it looks like we have Julian back. Julian, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah. Hey guys, sorry. Something happened right before right before we went live. But yeah, I'm Julian Turner. I am a 2020 graduate from Morehouse College. I am current graduate student at USC School of Cinematic Arts. A filmmaker, ex-athlete, um, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited to join in on this conversation. I feel like a lot of the art that I do and stories that I try to tell are to help, to help bring perspective and bring compassion towards our communities.
Definitely. That's great. So what we were talking about just when you joined in is I asked them, being Black during the pandemic and everything that's going on just literally right now, how are you feeling or how are you going through it? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's been pretty tough. Just I think emphasis on mental health has been a very recent trend. I think I've never really thought about that, about my mental health and how what I see and everything that's repeated, through the media and through experiences, how that affects our mental. So I think what COVID and the pandemic did allowed us to sit back and actually, kind of take into account what all that does and how that sits on us. So I think early on it was very, very tough. Not being able to go outside and really the only thing that you're seeing or hearing is what the media has to portray, what people are saying, and you see how our health is disproportionately affected through the pandemic. So I think just it was very, very heavy early on, but I think I was able to, come up with techniques and ways and improve my communication to the point where I can start managing my mental health a lot better. So even though it's been tough, I think I've been able to grow through it.
Definitely. With that mental health, like it is very important to keep that forefront and to keep yourself healthy, to keep people around you healthy. So, what are some things that you guys like did or still do to, I guess, take care of that aspect of it?
I'll
Elon
go. I'm really fortunate to have an incredible wife who loves the outdoors. And so we've been taking bike rides, go for walks. We try to do as much as we can outside and really taking in some nature. We've been reading a lot, really just trying to take care of ourselves and each other. It's not been easy, and certainly we don't have it on lock, but we've been blessed to be able to have each other, and where one is struggling, the other can help out, and vice versa. And so that's been a blessing. And then we've tried to stay in touch with our friends and family. Even as a result of the access to technology and things, FaceTime and Zoom. Although we're about zoomed out, I will say that. But I think being able to still find ways to connect and to do that. And then lastly, I would say to hold on. We've been holding on to our faith. I don't know how people can make it through this pandemic without it. I really don't. So we've got an incredible church family. We've stayed plugged in to church and to the people at church, and that has helped us a lot.
Yeah. Elon, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, in addition to many of the things that Deacon Hill had mentioned, like, of course, going outdoors with the kids, I like doing yard work. So that, helps me to kind of just clear my mind and clear my space, just space out of my mind. But I think for me as well, what I've learned lately is to communicate what I'm feeling, particularly with, my wife and other brothers my age who may be going through the same things that I'm going through, right? We've been all dealing with this just heaviness, the last year and a half or so, and many of us are struggling, but we're not talking to one another consistently about it. And I found that to be helpful for me and sharing what I've been going through with others. And it's like, well, yeah, man, I've been feeling the same thing, And so there's a couple brothers that I, talk to often and sometimes on a daily basis. Checked in on a couple brothers today. Let them know how I've been feeling, right? And that it's been tough for me, and asking them to pray for me, and hey, I'll pray for you as well, because it's not easy during this time. And so I found that in order to help me manage what I've been going through on a personal level, it's just to have people who know me well enough to continue to give me encouragement and insight on tips and ways that I can kind of work through some of those things, and consistently finding things that help me, work through those challenges when I'm experiencing them.
For sure. Sticking together is something we all have to do right now. Julien, what about you?
Yeah, to both their responses, I think my relationship with God has grown a lot stronger through this. In my relationship with the with the people that I care about a lot, my friendships and my family. I think um, I was able through it all to find a lot of habits and activities that help me relieve anxiety. You know, when I stopped playing football, fall of 2019, I didn't really, I took it as a break from working out and stuff, and I realized how much that exercise was important for relieving anxiety and feeling like I did something with my day. I think I just wanted to start out my days on a positive note. Going on walks, trying to setting even though things were shut down, setting goals for me throughout the day, trying to get 10K steps a day. And, I joined a CrossFit gym like 6 months ago. And, I wasn't the top of the group, but I'm definitely getting there now. I'm being more consistent with that. And just, kind of setting a schedule throughout the day. Since we're no longer in person, everything's virtual. It's easy to get out of that ritual that you have, and waking up at a certain time and brushing your hair and brushing your teeth and getting out of bed and getting in the car. So I think setting that routine was really big for me in helping me maintain the health of my mental.
Definitely. That is great. I know at the beginning, it's like you don't have to go to work, you don't have to do this. But now that we're a year into it, you got to figure out how to get things done with it. So thank you guys for those answers. And for everyone tuning in and watching with us, I just want to remind you to put and throw your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll definitely get to them. So for our first question, I want to ask you guys, many articles talk about Black people being tired with the pandemic, economic downturn, police killings, and gun violence in the streets. How has this affected you guys, whether it be physically, mentally, personally, however?
I'll go ahead and jump in here first. I was just having this conversation with some other folks, and I don't know what it is, and it could be just the times that we are living in, and even the space that I find myself in with my job, kids at home, taking care of the household, tending to wife as well. It's like I've been more tired now than I feel like I've ever been, right? And I don't know if it's just the space that I'm in, but I think what's contributed to all of that is the things that we are seeing in the media that we're all carrying with us, right? Part of me in my role and in my job, we respond to a number of community-based issues, right, and support nonprofit organizations, through my role. And many times I read articles and see things happening here in Columbus and try to think about like, how could we respond? How could we, a support, be a partner in the community to that work? Well, that's great, but on the flip side of that is I go to bed thinking about those things. I carry all those things with me all the time, right? And so what I've found is that I'm trying to do my best to manage and limit what I'm taking in on a consistent basis, because it's impossible to carry all that all the time, and trying to find some of those outlets. And so for me, I've just been thinking about what I can be doing, not only through my work, but also individually, but also being able to manage it in a way that's not going to allow myself to go crazy trying to do it all.
Yeah, if I could, I'm going to come from a different perspective. I think I'm emotionally tired, not necessarily physically tired. I'm emotionally tired from the standpoint of seeing, the killings, and seeing the attacks, seeing the setbacks, seeing those kinds of things. I'm emotionally tired. And I've had a conversation with someone. We were talking about what is it going to take? And the person was asking this from the perspective of, do we march? Do we do this? Do we do that? And everything. And I said, I think the first step is acknowledging And I think that's the struggle that makes me the most tired, if you will, is the refusal and resistance to just acknowledge what is. There are all kinds of ways to shape it and defend it and discuss, but just an acknowledgement of that. And I just raised one thing, and then I'll pass it on to Julian. But after World War II, Germany, the German citizens were essentially made to face what happened in the prison camps. They actually literally walked citizens through the prison camps so that they would face the evil that had occurred there. And then after that, the country as a whole decided to respond by ensuring that they would remember. And so there are all kinds of things that acknowledge in the country where it happened, what happened as it relates to the Holocaust. That is taught in the schools. There are monuments and plaques and things throughout that recognize the sin, right? That acknowledge the sin. And being in the Christian faith, we know that, we got to acknowledge and accept, right? You can't accept without acknowledging what you accept, why you have to accept that you need salvation, right? You got to acknowledge your sin. And I think that is the biggest sin of this country, which adds frustration and tiredness, if you will, to that from an emotional perspective, is the refusal to even acknowledge. Because I don't think that we can move forward until we do that. And so that it's like a constant dragging back, like uh, and that causes me to be tired. And then the last thing I'll say about that is I'm tired of having to provide an explanation. Every time something happens, somebody who doesn't look like me will pick up the phone and call me and reach out and say, well, I just want to start by saying I'm sorry and just I'm trying to get an understanding of how I think that conversation is great, but I'm tired of us as a people having to explain why somebody else needs to recognize that this is wrong. I'm tired of that.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Julian, go ahead. I'm gonna try to be
Yeah.
good today, Elon. I'm trying real hard, man.
I see you kind of containing yourself.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think my exhaustion was more emotional as well, especially um, given my the younger generations, the involvement in how integral social media is in our life. I think there was a point where everything I was seeing was very traumatic, and I had to just like put my phone away. Like I knew I couldn't get on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. I couldn't even turn on the TV without seeing something very, very traumatic. Um, and it's easy to get very discouraged with that. I think there were times where I was like, okay, I need to just sleep because there's nothing, if I felt very hopeless, helpless. And I think for me, when I realized that just because it's being shown on TV or on social mean that more has in the past. I think that was something specifically for me that I had to tell myself that this has always been happening. I've seen a lot of this stuff, and this is why I've decided to do what I do. This is why I decided to go to college. This is why I decided to uplift and have the drive and the why. Um,
Yeah.
Always, since I was a child. So I think there was a point where I was definitely very, very exhausted, felt very helpless. Um, but I kind of pulled myself back together, realized that this has been a reality that we've been living in our whole life, and it is, like you said, it's not our responsibility to explain that to somebody. It's just I think it's on us, and where we hold our values and our why and where our drive to continue to do what we're doing so that we can combat that. And so I think, if anything, instead of stopping or slowing down or letting that exhaustion stop us, I think I kind of use it as motivation to just keep going, as we're taught to, our whole lives as black men and black people in general.
can't.
Muted.
You're muted there. You're muted, Julien.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. I was just saying that Julian brought up a good point about the social media and how we've all expressed the emotional tired with seeing it every single day. So while social media is a powerful tool, both positive and negative, specifically towards what we are seeing on TV, do you guys wish, like, what could you change about that if you could change something about how we're seeing this stuff?
Yeah, I'll jump in just because that's kind of exactly what I want to do in terms of filmmaking, and I think uh, more than telling stories for civil justice and encouragement, I think just normalizing Black lives is what we need to do, and I think what drew me to filmmaking and media, since we've recently as a community have been birthed into this medium as 30, 40 years ago, and it's been around for 120 years. I think i think what got me into it was seeing the films and seeing the media of just us having fun, enjoying life, having superpowers, mysteries. It was never, you know, the slave movies that got me excited to go and be a filmmaker. It was always the ones that normalized my life. And so I think a huge part of changing that, and what I want to see is just taking these formulas that the industry and the media uses to get buzz with other communities and with other groups, and just plugging Black lives into them. More representation, and being able to see ourselves in every scenario instead of just the traumatic ones that put us at risk and in danger.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I celebrate that. I really appreciate what Julian just said because I think that's it. I call it showing the other side, right? We see one side is it's negative, but there's another side to it. I mean, we're multidimensional, just like anybody else. And I think oftentimes we're showed in a singular dimension, and it's so unfair. One of my yeah, favorite movies. My wife is into chick flicks and Hallmark Channel and all that. You guys know what I'm talking about. But one of the things that one of the movies I like to watch with her is Love and Basketball. Now that's old school, and I know Elon, you don't know anything about that, Julian. But one of the reasons I love that movie is that it shows Black love, and Black love is beautiful, right? But we don't necessarily get to see that because oftentimes as people we're portrayed differently in the movies, and so I really appreciate what Julian just said as far as showing the multi dimensions of us as people. So when you talk about social media, I always try to counter that. I always try to look for something beautiful. I see something ugly, I try to find something beautiful. And my wife and I and friends, we share things back and forth that we see beautiful. Anything, positive about fatherhood, I'm all about that. I try to share that and show that because it's negative as it relates to Black men, often, not all the time, but often. So I appreciate that. And so that's kind of my strategy. And I need that so that I'm not down on myself. I'm not down on my people. So that's what I try to do to kind of balance that out.
I mean, I don't know if there was anything. I mean, y'all said it perfectly, and I think, as you were talking, I actually come to a question maybe for you all, if you don't mind me jumping in here with a question, Paige, mostly around just, Deacon Hill, you mentioned kind of being able to counteract, and Julian, you mentioned being able to normalize like Black lives. And I sometimes find myself carrying the weight of that normalization, right, and counteracting, right. I work in this corporate environment, right. I have mixed race sets of friends, and I sometimes carry the weight of that. And I wonder what that's like for you all as well, right, in your different industries, because that's something I've been dealing with and struggling with as well.
I'll let Julien go and I'll respond.
All right. Yeah, I definitely feel like in spaces where we can always be found as like the token black person, and usually finding ourselves carrying the weight of what it means to be black. Um, I think I think when I realized that was a part of, I mean, it's a part. It's normalized in my life. I like, it's now a part of my identity. Like, I no longer, find that, even though it does get annoying sometimes, I no longer find that as an as an obstacle in a sense. Um, I think is we're moving in a direction where people are being more compassionate and starting to educate themselves. Where I see it's kind of the stigma of that tokenism is kind of changing and shifting. But I also don't think that is a pressure that we have to that I put on myself to explain
Yeah.
anything that I do, or any experience that I have. I think it's a sign of, I think it's relief for me to tell myself I don't have to explain myself to anybody, as long as I am doing what needs to be done, and I am excelling or meeting the expectations I set for myself. You might feel those. I feel those pressures all the time. And then I just remind myself, why do I really care? As long as I'm, um, meeting my expectations, doing what God has told me to do. I think there is no need for me to try to explain myself, or try to be what other people want me to be.
Yeah. Elon, that was a
Amen
great
to that.
question. Yeah, you
Mhm.
asked. Ed, did you have something to say for
Oh
that?
yeah, I mean, really, I just echo that. I would add that oftentimes, and I think Elon, we've talked before. I mean, oftentimes I'm the only one in my particular field, right? In technology and in the space that I'm in. And so I try to I remember that. And as a result of that, I remember the responsibility for myself first that God has placed on me. And then secondly, I remember that I'm part of a community, right? A community that has survived because people have carried some sort of banner. And that's heavy. That's like, it's not fair. It's not fair, right? It's not fair that you can't just be all the time, right? There's sometimes you can, but there's always somebody watching. And no matter what you do, they're going to not pin this on you as a human being, but they're going to pin it on Black people, right? And so I'm conscious of that. And I work to try to make sure that if that is the case, that it's going to be something that is positive, right? So
Right.
in my location where I'm at, we had an opportunity to hire some folks, and prior to this, I was one of three people in the entire organization that looked like me, right? The only male and two young ladies. And so I lobbied and asked if I could be part of the hiring committee, and it was a challenge. It was a struggle. It really was. But we were able to bring some other people on, um, diverse, not just Black, but just across the board. I wanted to sprinkle some color in that. And there's a line from Hamilton, the musical, The Room Where It Happens, right? I was fortunate to be able to be in the room where it happened at that time, but it made me think, and it reminded me of the fact of all those times when I'm not, because I'm not always invited to the table. I'm not there. But when I can, I'm going to do what I can, where I can. And so I would say to you, my brother, is that be who you are first, right? Be who God made you. And I think by doing that, just like Julian said, he will use you in a way that represents and uplifts, right? I think if we go in thinking that we're doing it, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. It's not about it's not us that's doing that. Even all those people that came before us, they were doing it for a much higher cause, not just so they could walk around and say, "Oh, look at what I did for our people." No, no, it was much higher than that. So I mean, I want to encourage you because the question is powerful, and it's amazing that you're thinking about it. But know that you are where you are for a reason and for a purpose, and that purpose, man, is greater than us. And if we plug into the source, the one who gave you the position, the one that set the purpose, you'll be fine. You'll represent just right.
Not
Thank you
I
both.
want to add something small. A mentor of mine, when I first got to USC, I realized that I was the only African American male in my cohort. We had about 150 students. And so what I realized was that was a reflection of the industry, and reflection of the media that we had always been digesting. But as we were going through projects, I realized that a lot of the criticisms that I was getting on my projects and a lot of criticisms I was getting on my scripts were criticisms of that were criticisms of realism that they just couldn't understand, that no one could really understand. And what I asked one of my mentors after he put out a film, and it didn't do well in terms of the Rotten Tomatoes and the awards. I asked him how he felt, and he said, who's my audience? And and he asked me that, and I was, that's not for me to tell him. But he was like, I'm doing this for Black people. That's my audience. So is what they say is that's how I determine if it's successful or not. And if you apply that with your faith, my audience, I'm not doing anything but to reflect what the Lord has in me, and to reflect Jesus. And so, just beyond film and applying that to life, who's my audience? My audience isn't my coworker and impressing them. Is my it's reflecting the Lord and doing what He's told me to do, and hopefully bringing up our community in the process.
Yeah. Julian, that's a great point that you bring up. And I just wanted to appreciate what you had said about doing what you can where you can, for any step or anything that you're doing. So a question that we had in the chat was, what tools have you used to overcome the microaggressions that you faced in the workplace and in the marketplace, or Julian, you for school? So whoever wants to jump in, tell us what you've done to kind of get
I'll
past
take
that.
Yeah, I'll say just very quickly, the first thing is not thinking that I could do any of this by myself, right? So I talk to people. I have brothers that I reach out to. I have people that I look up to. Um, I read a lot. I'm checking things out. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend people reading Ibrahim X. Kendi's book about anti-racist, because those kinds of things allow you to come up with strategies. A lot of people will talk about theories, but not real like practical. I use this as an example. Like in Sunday school, they teach you about the Ten Commandments, right? And they say, thou shalt not lie. But they don't necessarily, in some place, they don't necessarily tell you how not to do that, because your flesh, your tendency, if you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, is to lie, right? That's where our flesh. So I agree. Okay, I shouldn't lie, but how do I not do that in this situation, that situation? So I look for practical strategies and practical things. In the example I gave you before about my workplace, I went to the CEO and I said, I would like to be a part of the hiring committee. Right now, a lot of times the situation might be, well, you sit and wait for you to be invited. But I took the John Lewis example, which is to get in good trouble, right? Like if he's going to be upset with me, it's going to be for something good. So I just brought it to him. When the whole George Floyd piece happened, everybody was writing these letters of apology. Basically, all these companies were coming out. We were no different. The CEO called me and said, I feel this and I feel that and da da da. And I said, so what are you going to do about it? This conversation you're having with me, is that like your amends? Like, because that's not enough. So, we talked about some real strategic things to do. So I guess I would wrap it up by saying the theory is important, but it has to be driven down, even past the strategy, down to tactics. Like, this is what you have to specifically do in order to move the needle. And so I work real hard to try to get in the face of people. I don't necessarily, back away from the issues or the challenges. I'm willing to have a conversation. If you want to have a conversation, let's talk, but it's going to be real. We're going to talk for real. I'm not going to tiptoe around the issues. And I think for me, that has worked, because then people have come and said, you know what, he's going to be real. So okay, I know what I'm getting to him about that. So I would share that as a strategy.
Definitely. You have to speak up and be willing to be a part of the change if you want to see one. So, um, Elon or
Um,
Julian?
yeah, I'll say for me, and I think a huge part of dealing with microaggressions for me has been allyship. Um, I think I'm very adamant about not having to explain myself, but um, I make meaningful and form meaningful relationships so that when I am in spaces where that happens, I'm not the one that has to speak up, or I'm not the one that is speaking up. And I think that is most productive for all parties to be able to. I think educating, people who call themselves allies or want to be my friend, I think is huge for me from the jump to tell them, okay, this is, as my friend, this is something that bothers me. If this happens, please, please be aware that this is happening. This has happened, and I've been in spaces where they have spoken up, and I haven't had to raise my hand or I haven't had to say anything because it was addressed immediately, which is really really cool. And it's dope. I don't know if that's something that's been able to happen in the past or because of everything that's happening now. I think there are a lot of people out here that want to know how to help, that want to know how to counteract this from a genuine perspective. And then I don't know whether this is uh, a toxic practice, but it's a very unfortunate that we have to do this. But always exceptionalism is always a way to counteract that with our people, especially with Black women in the workspace and in school. Having to have your work speak for yourself is usually the way I go. But hopefully we'll get to a space where we don't necessarily have to be exceptional just to be respected in a sense. But I think that right now that is usually my go-to through exceptionalism and allyship.
Yeah.
And I think the only other thing that I'll add in addition to just the things that have been mentioned, like around education, for me, I've been, I would say I've been blessed and fortunate enough to like work in some environments that have been pretty accepting and affirming, of who, I am as an individual, as a person, as a Black man. And, but when there have been times where there are things that have come up, because either I or they, or we collectively took the time to get to know each other and build that trust. When things do come up and things are said, Julian's point, like they know me, they know my character, and then they're going to defend, or correct someone when they have said a micro or shared a microaggression, either towards me or someone else in the environment, and I found that to be extremely helpful. And so, to Julian's point, for me, it's just been like showing up, being my authentic self, and not giving people a reason, to speak about me or people who look like me in a particular way. But then, to Deacon Hill's point earlier, I think for even for myself, when those things have come up, I haven't really necessarily shied away from, having those conversations. Yes, have I had to kind of like talk it through myself? Okay, how are we going to have this conversation? Did it take me some time to figure out what words I was going to say, practice it in my mind, and then approach it? Yeah, I did, because I believe that there's power in words, and I want to be sure to not to scare them off in any way, to not want to have the conversation in the future. And so, yes, there's that carrying the burden of being able to taking that strategy to educate. But I think it's been helpful for me in the environments that I've been in as well.
Definitely. So, with that, what conversations are you having with your own children or nieces, nephews, friends, little brothers? What are you telling and explaining to them?
I'll let Deacon Hill go, because I think it's for me.
Well,
I'll jump in and say
oh,
first, with the kids wise, they're 6 and 3, right now, and I don't find myself, having conversations with them, but I have found myself directing their behaviors, in ways that that I feel like I will protect them, for both now and in the future. And I think with friends, I'll be frank and say with my black friends, I can have, a great authentic conversations around the things that we're seeing and how we're being impacted by things, but not so much, maybe so much with some of my white friends. And it doesn't come up as much. And if it does come up, I'm bringing it up, and I don't have to bring it up all the time, And so, so for me, that's how conversations have been going with the kids. But with certain kinds of friends, either we do or we're not having the conversations enough unless I'm bringing it up, as more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm trying to be active, but cautious. As I mentioned, I have two adult children. We talk and we talk about the issues. We talk about the things that are going down. My son is an attorney, so he has a unique perspective on things, and I like, picking his brain about different things, and I'll toss an idea out and see what his feedback is on that. For instance, we talked about the Derek Chauvin case. We talked about, some of these other, trials and things that have occurred. Um, but I have, as I mentioned before, I have a 9-year-old at home, and I'm going to just be, frank and transparent. I remember in June or in May rather, when George Floyd was murdered. I just remembered breaking down and crying. Like, I watched the video and I didn't want to. I'll be honest. Somebody texted me and said, "You've got to see this. This is horrible." And it was almost like a car crash kind of thing. Like, I didn't want to watch it, but there was something that told me, "You need to watch this." And I remember watching it, and my wife was sitting on the love seat beside me, or on the couch beside me, and I was on the other side. And I just remember dropping my phone and crying. And I don't think that I, you know, uh, realized that I was just like weeping. And then she started to cry. She knew why. There were really no words at that time for her to quote, like, minister to me. I just needed to get that out. Fortunately, our daughter was in bed. We waited until she was in bed in order to do that. But the next day, that was still with me, and so my daughter is very perceptive, and she knows when something's going on with me, and she asked me, and I told her. I told her what happened. Um, she We try to shield her, we try to, be careful of that, but she's in the car when we're listening to NPR, or she knows what's going on. She knows what's happening. And she asks questions. And so for her, my wife and I, we try to walk her through that, but we try to do it in a way that she doesn't necessarily get the venom of hate, right? The venom of, ugliness. We try to, make sure that she sees that through the eyes of faith and through the eyes of hope. That's hard. I'm just keeping it 100 with you. That's hard because we're hurt, we're angry, right? But we try to remember that she's watching us. So we do have those conversations. We have the hard conversations with her because she asks hard questions at age 9. She's asking real deal questions. With other people, um, not so much with other, certainly with other children, because we think that that's a conversation that families need to have within themselves. Um, Other colleagues, I've had, as I mentioned, other people call me when things have happened. I received so many phone calls in June after, George Floyd was murdered and other, shootings and things, that I got tired, but I realized that actually these folks they were reaching out. They want to be allies. That's why they called. They just didn't know how or what to do next. So I didn't shun that, but after the calls, I was still just like drained that I even had to have that conversation. But it's important for us to have the conversation to help people who want to be allies. I don't want to have that conversation to defend anything to anybody. That's a different conversation that we need to have. But to answer your question directly, Paige, I think for us in our home, we've been direct with our daughter. We've shared, our feelings, and let her know that as much as we want the world to be beautiful, there are some ugly things out there in the world, and that's why we love God and love Jesus, and we need Him to help us and be with us and protect us every single day.
Um, I think for me, being in guess a different dynamic, I think most of the conversations I have are with my peers and my younger brother and my younger cousins. I think the main thing that I try to emphasize is knowledge. I think that is the main reason I decided I wanted to go to Morehouse, because I felt like there were conversations that I couldn't engage in, um, because I just didn't have the educational background to do that. And I think now I embrace having a lot of those conversations, where some may not, it may be, um, it may bring a lot of anxiety to some people. I think I talk a lot, and so I think that is a tool that I use specifically to kind of um, help people come to their own realizations just by presenting facts, and hopefully they'll be able to draw conclusions themselves. I know a lot of people's conclusions and a lot of people's this are very emotionally driven or experiential. So um, I think conversations are very huge. I have those conversations with my family, with my little brother all the time. Just what's going on, where that comes from, how deep it is in our history, and I think that helps offer perspective. Then at the end of the day, while there are a lot of things that we can't control that are always, kind of driven into our psyche, what we can't control. I think the main thing that I always try to do or try to tell people is, write down what we can control. What is it that we have control over in our own life that can help us at least protect our own peace, while all around us are kind of losing theirs. And so um, I think that's our relationship, how we respond to things, decide we tolerate, what we decide we want to say yes to, and being realistic with our capacity to do things. Because I realized early on I was getting very, very overwhelmed because I was a yes person, because I didn't want to be a a the jerk black guy that was that had an attitude or that was didn't want to work with something. It got to the point where I was able to um, come up with a way to say no, um, to things. I think that's very, very powerful, being able to say no to certain things to protect your own peace, to protect your own capacity and anxieties. So I think that's what I tell people, and what I emphasize.
Paige, if I could, I want to say something because Julian really sparked something in my mind there. Um, Here's the thing that I think it's really important for us to remember. The first is that there's a lot that's put on us just as men, as black men, period. So like if we took all the like the race stuff out, all the killings, all that, if we just took that away, right, there would still be a whole lot that we got to deal with, period. Right? So that's heavy, and then you layer that on, right, the other stuff. um but through all of that, i I love being black. I love black people. I love the differences in us. I love the funny stuff about us. I love the crazy. I love it. Now, because I love it and because I love us, right? There are things that I want for that would be better, right? I want things to be better for us, right? So um it's not about me and watching this like a movie or a cartoon and like, oh, I love those black people. No, no, that's me. That's who I am, right? I say that to say that given all the negativity, right? Given the fact that I live in a community that's supposed to be safe. I live, in Gahanna, Ohio, supposed to be nice, middle class neighborhood and all that. I still, every time I go for a walk, if I go for a walk around the block with my daughter, I still take my wallet, my keys, and my phone because I don't know when there's going to be a Karen who says, I don't live in this neighborhood. That's not right. I shouldn't have to do that as a black man. I shouldn't have to ask my white colleagues if they ever do that. When you go for a jog in the morning, do you stop to grab your wallet before you go? And they're like, no, I can't even put a wallet in my pants. Well, guess what? I got to select pants that I can put a wallet or carry it somehow. I say that to say, as messed up as that is, I still would not want to be anything but black. I would not want to be anything than what God has made me. There's a richness to our people. There's a beauty to our people. And I think this negativity that we see, the stuff that's going on, can, if we allow it, can push us down and make us think something that we shouldn't. We are an amazing, amazing people. The stuff that we've been through and the stuff that we have endured and the stuff we have created and built. I'm telling you, people all over the world want our culture. They're taking and borrowing from us for a reason. And so I say that to say I want us to be encouraged because the things we see, the things we experience can very easily pull us down. But we are a powerful and mighty people, and a beautiful, beautiful people, part of the human race.
Definitely. We are all one. I think that was a great closing to for us to all hear. And a last question to ask is, are there a couple of things that you want to be sure to teach your Black children, especially if they are male, so they grow up with a good sense of purpose?
Well, so I don't have children yet, but I think for me, one thing I want to emphasize is I want to the pressure, um, relieve some pressure from growing up as a black man, that society will place on you. The pressure of exceptionalism I think is huge, and I really want my kids, my son, to grow up knowing that whatever he finds joy in, he can make that. He can surround his life around that, around God, and whatever he finds joy in. He doesn't have to sacrifice his joy to live life. He doesn't have to play basketball because someone tells him to. He doesn't have to play football because someone tells him to. He doesn't have to, he doesn't have to cut his hair because other people feel less comfortable around dreadlocks. I think that's one thing that I want to drive in the raising of a son if I were to have one.
I think what I would add is just continuing to encourage my boys that they should love God, love themselves, and love other people, and be true to who they are, to be their authentic selves. That's all I would ever want them to be, and for me to show them love in that. And so those are the things that I'll work to instill in my two little beautiful black boys who I love dearly, and I continue to do my part to pour into them each day. And I found myself moved into a new neighborhood last year, and there's some other little boys who actually come and visit the neighborhood because their grandmother lives there, and they come over to our house often, right? And so I've even found myself kind of trying to do my part to kind of pour into them, right? These same things that I'm pouring into even my own kids. So I'm trying to make sure I do my part when I can, to not only to encourage my two boys, but others as well, and that they can take that on generationally or into their own networks and friends and other spaces as well.
Yeah, I would just say, again, I was blessed to raise a son. He's doing quite well. He's married, and he has a foundation of faith. So I would say, number one, to have that foundation of faith. The second thing is to build on that foundation with hope, not just hope in Christ, but Christ wants us to have hope here while we're here, and I want him to do that. And so, much like what Elon said, I now have the opportunity and have been doing it to mentor, some young men, and have opportunity for people to trust me with speaking life into their children and to their young boys. And so that's, it's a huge blessing. And I would say just that I want to be able to inspire them and encourage them to press on and be all that God created them to be.
Yeah, I think those are all great advices that everyone can take and use forth. So, with that, I want to thank you guys again for coming in and shedding light on what you guys are going through or what you see going on, and how you pointed out that while there is a lot of bad in the world, there is just as much good. We just have to find ways to pull that out. So, again, thank you, you guys. If anyone has any last minute remarks. Yes, no.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here. Appreciate it. And, I think even though I might be the oldest, I think I'm the youngest looking one on here. I'm looking at these guys with
Yeah, most
Thank you, guys.
knowledgeable.
Thank you.
thank
For
you.
sure. Thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for tuning in. Join us again next week, next Wednesday at 5 o'clock for another great conversation. Thank you guys again, and stay safe, stay blessed. Have a good night.
Take care. God bless.